Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Uh-huh.
And today we've got a story that's, well, kind of strange
Yeah, definitely strange.
and disturbing.
Yeah.
It all started with a Reddit post
Mm-hmm.
where this woman's asking for relationship advice
Okay.
because her husband has been secretly killing all of her houseplants
Oh, wow.
with bleach.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
That's so strange.
it is.
Yeah.
And, we see all sorts of crazy stuff online.
Right.
But this one really caught our eye.
My 31 female, husband 32 male, has been killing my houseplants with bleach. I have many houseplants, and even some that were quite expensive and were gifts from my sister. Within the last 6 months, at least a third of my plants have died. I have had houseplants my whole life due to my late mother's own love of houseplants, and I know a lot about plants. The death of the plants didn't seem related to lack of light, or inconsistent watering, or lack of nutrients, or even root rot. They just died very suddenly. I tried to not let it upset me too much because plants die, and it was not any of the expensive ones, until now. My sister gave me a 5-leaf Monstera albo rooted plant for my birthday, 2 months ago. It was beautiful. This morning I was crying pretty hard about it, as I unpotted it and took a look at the roots, and I was looking hard at this plant and roots to see if its death was pest-related. And that's when I noticed a smell. I sniffed my potting mix, and I smelled bleach. The only other adult person in my home with unlimited and unobserved access to my plants is my husband. I wasn't able to talk to him for several hours, but when I could speak to him, I very calmly but very directly asked if he had done something to my plants. He denied it at first. I said I smelled bleach in the potting mix of the albo my sister had gotten me, and that the only person that could have put it there was him, and he caved. He said he was putting small amounts of bleach into the fertilizer water jugs I prepare. I started crying. I asked him why. Why would you do this? I love these plants. Why would you destroy them? He didn't really answer, nor did he really apologize. The trust I had in him is absolutely gone. I think maybe counseling can help us, but he is the one that did this. But I'm the one that would have to set up the counseling. The angry part of me just wants to be done with the relationship. I know that might seem overboard, as we are married and share a child. But I feel now that I'm not safe around my husband. Edit. I thank everyone for giving advice. The townhome we live in is mine and my sister's, our inheritance from my mother. My husband has an office, den/gaming room that is his personal space, and there are no plants there. There are also no plants in the kitchen. I'm not a plant hoarder. Like he has a room for himself, I also have a sunroom, and that is where the concentration of plants live. He has no reason to go in there. It's not access to our backyard or anything. I saw some people saying maybe he's sick of bugs, but I do not have a fungus gnat problem. I did see one person ask, why did I not smell the bleach when I was watering? And I can only say my nose wasn't all up in there, maybe? I also usually use a natural systemic in my fertilizer water called SNS-209 that smells heavily of rosemary, but I ran out last month and haven't replaced yet. After our convo yesterday, I needed space. I spent the night in my daughter's room on a trundle bed. I am going to text my husband today. He usually communicates easier and opens up more via text, rather than face-to-face. I am going to ask for a reason, and I'll see what he says. Edit 2. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to update on a separate post. My husband won't be welcome in my home anymore, and I need to find a lawyer ASAP on Monday. I did text him, and he admitted again to putting bleach in my fertilizer water. He says it wasn't every jug I ever made, so that explains why it wasn't all my plants dying, but randomly over the past 6 months. His exact words were that I deserved to be knocked down a peg. After the text communication, I went home from work early and I entered his office. I usually respect his space absolutely. I don't even go in there to grab dirty dishes. I don't know what I was looking for, but the hundreds of comments saying he was working up to something worse or already was doing something else really worried me. I went in there and I found a drawer full of my daughter's dolls and dollhouse furniture and little toys. I bought her that dollhouse for her 4th birthday last year, and she has loved it. She takes such good care of her toys, But something always ends up missing, and it's always my husband who notices. He lectures her about keeping track of her things and how he won't let her play with her dollhouse if she keeps losing things. He keeps going till she starts to sob. When I hear this going on, I always step in and ask him to go take a break. I assumed he was losing his cool. I've told him this is not how to deal with this with a kid, and he says he just wants her to grow up responsible. I now see it was some weird scheme, or setup or something. He would steal the stuff and stash it away and point out it was gone to berate our daughter till she cried. My sister and her husband's dad came over this afternoon, and they've changed the locks. I've texted him to tell him he isn't coming back and that he can come on Saturday morning to grab his essential things, but that my bro-in-law and another man would be there to watch. Sorry if this is unclear or things seem missing. This Reddit post isn't my priority. I will probably not be updating again. Thank you to everyone worried about my safety. Update. I've recently got some messages asking for me to update and let the internet know I'm safe. My daughter and I are both safe. Without getting into too much detail, but to satiate the curious, my husband, the man I thought I knew, has changed so much that I think of it like him ripping off a mask. He's sworn at me, screamed at me, and pushed me to the ground twice and kicked me in the face. Our entire marriage, I was never ever afraid of physical violence from this man. The police have been involved. Divorce is still in progress. After an initial period of intense anger, my husband seemingly stopped caring at all, though. He said he doesn't want any custody, and he wants to give up his parental rights of our daughter. He doesn't see her. In the last month, I have heard he actually has a new girlfriend. His parents still talk to me. I was on good terms with his mom. Also, a friend of my husband's, who's been friends with him since college, reached out to me to ask what is going on. We texted. He says my husband has ghosted that entire group of friends he still had after someone in the group called him out for some sort asshole-ish behavior. One positive thing, that is also sad, is that my daughter is bright and wonderful. There's been such a profound change to her behavior since her dad's been gone. She's happy and silly and joyful. I guess there's been a change in both her and my behavior. I think of it like the frog in the boiling pot. I was sitting there boiling to my death and never realized. We lived in a house of walking on eggshells. If husband was upset, he would infect the house with hostility. I'm not sure I can describe it. I was constantly on guard and never able to relax. I was not afraid of physical violence, though, so I don't want to describe it as something more serious than it was. Thank you all for making me realize I was in that boiling pot. This sub says I need to pose a question to post. What can I do for my daughter to let her know she's safe and loved always? I know I failed her whenever I heard her dad yelling at her about the dollhouse. I can say I tried to step in at all times when I heard it going on, but that doesn't seem enough. I feel so guilty. She is on a waiting list for therapy. Our structure is still the same. She looks like she's thriving, but I just don't know.
Let's start with the original post.
Okay.
The woman describes herself as a plant enthusiast.
Oh.
She grew up around plants. She knows how to care for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real passion of hers.
Yeah.
But her husband,
Yeah.
not so much.
Yeah.
But instead of just communicating that he's not a fan of her hobby, he chooses to act in secret.
Yeah.
And that's already a bit of a red flag right there.
Yeah, it is interesting because, for months, things are fine.
Right.
And then her plants start dying off one by one, seemingly for no reason.
Right.
And she's confused and she's upset.
Of course. Yeah.
But then it happens to a really special plant,
Oh.
a 5-leaf Monstera albo.
Okay.
It was a gift from her sister.
Ah.
And, this wasn't just any plant. This had sentimental value.
Right.
Losing it was devastating.
Yeah. It sounds like we're not just talking about a random act of vandalism here. He's targeting something that represents her connection to her family, her passion, her sense of self.
Yeah.
He's striking at the heart of what brings her joy.
Right.
So, that raises questions about his motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a form of passive aggression,
Right.
a way to express resentment or anger without direct confrontation?
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, how does she even discover what's going on?
Right. Well, so she's cleaning up the dead elbow.
Oh.
And she notices a faint smell of bleach in the potting mix.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so she confronts her husband, and after some initial denials, he admits to putting bleach in her fertilizer jugs.
Oh, wow.
He doesn't offer an apology.
Really?
Or an explanation.
Wow.
Just a confession.
So just like, yep, I did it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that lack of explanation is what's so unsettling. It leaves us wondering, is he trying to gaslight her?
Yeah.
Make her question her own sanity? Or is this a sign of something even more disturbing?
Right.
A lack of empathy or remorse that could point to some deeper psychological issues.
Yeah. And so the online community obviously had a pretty strong reaction to this whole story.
Oh, yeah, they did.
A lot of people saw this as a clear sign of something much darker. This pattern of behavior known as coercive control.
Right.
And, commenters were drawing parallels to other stories.
Yeah.
Of partners sabotaging or destroying things that their significant others valued. Like there was this one guy who threw all of his girlfriend's plants in a lake.
Oh, wow.
Another one who deleted his girlfriend's PhD thesis.
Seriously?
Yeah. Even one who stole his partner's EpiPen.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That's scary.
It is, and it's really disturbing.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is this recurring theme of jealousy and control.
Right.
These aren't just random acts of destruction. These are targeted attempts to hurt, to diminish, and to exert power over the partner.
Yeah, and the thing that really got to people was the lack of remorse from the husband.
Yeah.
It's like, if you loved someone, wouldn't you want to see them happy?
Right.
Why would you deliberately try to destroy something that brings them joy?
That's a great question, and it's a question a lot of people were asking.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about the hidden dynamics in relationships and how even seemingly small acts of sabotage can be a sign of something much more serious.
Absolutely. And in her post, the woman mentions that she feels unsafe around her husband now.
Right.
That the trust is shattered.
Of course.
And she's not sure what to do next.
Yeah.
Whether counseling can even help at this point.
Yeah, let's consider the challenges of rebuilding trust.
Okay.
It's not just about apologies. It's about understanding the underlying motivations.
Yeah.
And whether there's a genuine willingness to change. If the husband continues to deny or minimize his actions, it's unlikely to be successful.
Yeah. And, to make matters even worse, this wasn't even just a one-time thing.
Oh, really?
He admitted to putting bleach in some of her fertilizer jugs over a period of 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so she starts wondering, he's been sabotaging other things in her life.
Right. That's a key point.
Yeah.
Coercive control often starts small with these subtle acts of manipulation or sabotage.
Okay.
And then it escalates over time. The abuser tests the boundaries, and if there are no consequences, they become bolder.
Yeah. And so she finds a drawer full of her daughter's toys.
What?
The toys that her husband had been blaming her for losing.
Oh, my gosh.
Making her feel bad about it.
Wow.
Turns out he was hiding them all along.
Seriously.
Intentionally trying to make her look incompetent.
Oh, my gosh. This is where the situation takes an even darker turn.
Yeah.
It suggests that this pattern of manipulation and emotional abuse extends beyond the couple's relationship to their child.
Yeah.
Creating this atmosphere of fear and control within the entire family.
Right. And so her sister and brother-in-law help her change the locks. And the husband isn't allowed back in the house.
Good.
But that doesn't erase the trauma or the fear.
Of course not.
It's a lot to process.
Yeah. This is a perfect example of why having a strong support system is so crucial in situations like this. Having people you can trust to offer practical help, emotional validation, and a safe space is incredibly important for anyone experiencing abuse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the question remains,
right,
what happens next?
Yeah, and that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll delve into the psychology behind this type of behavior.
Okay.
The challenges of rebuilding trust, and the potential long-term impact on both the woman and her daughter.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. So we left off with the husband being locked out of the house after his wife discovered what he'd been doing. And what's interesting is that she immediately turned to the online community for support.
Yeah, and she got it big time.
Yeah.
I mean, the comment section on her post just exploded.
Wow.
People were outraged on her behalf.
Rightfully so.
But they also offered a lot of really practical advice.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, they urged her to document everything. Screenshots of text messages, photos of the bleach, anything that could be used as evidence.
Right.
If she decided to take legal action.
Yeah, that documentation can be crucial in situations like this.
Right.
Especially if there are concerns about escalating abuse. It helps establish a clear timeline of events.
Right.
Provides validation for the victim. And can be essential if seeking support from authorities or legal counsel.
Yeah, and a lot of commenters were also sharing their own stories.
Oh, really?
Of partners who had sabotaged or destroyed things that were important to them.
Wow.
It's heartbreaking to realize how common this type of behavior seems to be.
It's a stark reminder that abuse isn't always physical.
Right.
It can be emotional, psychological, and often manifests in these subtle but incredibly damaging ways.
Yeah, and there was a lot of discussion about why the husband might have done this.
Right.
Some people thought maybe he was just clueless. Completely oblivious to how much her plants meant to her.
Okay, but the fact that he chose to act in secret over such a long period of time suggests something more deliberate. You know, if he genuinely didn't understand why his actions were hurtful, wouldn't he have stopped when she started getting upset about her plants dying?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It makes it harder to believe that it was just a misunderstanding or a lack of awareness on his part.
Exactly. And it's also worth noting that he wasn't just passively neglecting her plants. He was actively taking steps to kill them.
Right.
That level of intentionality is troubling.
Yeah, some commenters suggested that maybe he was resentful of the time and attention she devoted to her plants.
Okay.
Like maybe he felt neglected or jealous.
Jealousy can definitely be a factor in these types of situations.
Right.
You know, it's possible he felt threatened by her passion for something outside of their relationship and saw her plants as a symbol of that.
It seems crazy to think that someone could be jealous of plants.
Right.
But I guess when insecurity and a need for control take hold, it can really warp your perceptions.
Absolutely. And remember, this isn't just about the plants themselves.
Right.
It's about the underlying power dynamics in the relationship. He's choosing to exert control.
Yeah.
In a way that undermines her happiness and makes her doubt her own abilities.
Yeah. And in a later update, the woman shared that she had confronted her husband about the toys that he had hidden. And he admitted to doing it.
Wow.
Saying that she deserved to be knocked down a peg.
That statement is chilling.
Yeah.
It reveals a complete lack of remorse and a desire to punish her.
Right.
This isn't about miscommunication or differing priorities. It's about power and control.
Yeah. It seems like discovering the truth about the toys was a real turning point for her.
Right.
It was no longer just about the plants. It was about the emotional well-being of her daughter.
It's incredibly disturbing to think that he was willing to manipulate and gaslight his own child.
Right.
To make his wife feel bad.
Yeah.
It raises serious concerns about his capacity for empathy and the safety of the family environment.
So what are some other red flags that might indicate that a partner is exhibiting controlling or abusive tendencies? What should people be looking out for?
Well, there are many warning signs.
Okay.
And they often start subtly. You know, isolating you from friends and family, constantly checking your phone or online activity, controlling your finances.
Yeah.
These can all be early indicators.
So it's not always about overt aggression or violence. It can be much more insidious than that.
Exactly. It can be about chipping away at your self-esteem, making you question your own perceptions,
right,
and gradually eroding your sense of independence.
So what's the psychological term for this kind of behavior?
Well, plant killer isn't an official diagnosis.
Okay.
But the husband's actions align with several psychological concepts that we've already touched on.
Right.
You know, coercive control, definitely passive aggression.
Right.
Where anger and resentment are expressed indirectly through seemingly small destructive acts.
But wouldn't most people communicate their frustrations directly?
Well,
why resort to this kind of covert sabotage?
That's where things get complex. Okay. Sometimes it's about a fear of confrontation, an inability to articulate their needs in a healthy way.
Right.
Sometimes it stems from deep-seated insecurities or a need to feel superior and in control.
So how can someone break free from this type of toxic dynamic?
Well, the first step is recognizing that it's happening.
Okay.
That it's not normal or healthy.
Right.
Documenting the behavior can help validate your experiences and create a record if you need to seek legal counsel or support from domestic violence resources.
Okay, what about couples counseling?
Yeah. Could that be helpful in a situation like this? Counseling can be effective, Okay. But only if both parties are willing to acknowledge the problem and actively work towards change.
Right.
If the abuser denies their behavior or refuses to take responsibility, it's unlikely to be successful.
This whole story has been pretty heavy.
It has.
It's a reminder that abuse can take many forms and that it's important to be aware of the signs.
Absolutely.
Both in our own relationships and in the lives of those we care about.
The more we talk about these issues, the more we can break the silence and empower people to seek help. And for those who are struggling in silence, please know that you're not alone. There are resources available, like the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which you can call or text 247.
Okay, in the final part of this deep dive, we'll look at the aftermath of the wife's decision and explore the long-term implications of this experience for her and her daughter. Okay, so we've been deep diving into this unsettling Reddit story about the husband secretly killing his wife's plants with bleach.
Right.
And, he was also gaslighting his own daughter by hiding her toys and blaming the wife for losing them.
Yeah, a lot going on in this one.
Yeah, it's really messed up. And she's now staying at her sister's. Sounds like her husband's been locked out of the house.
Right.
It's all pretty intense.
It is. This is the part where we usually see if the couple tries to work things out.
Right.
In this case, though, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, he didn't exactly seem remorseful.
Right.
When he was confronted.
Yeah.
Instead of apologizing, he doubled down. He told her she deserved to be knocked down a peg.
Exactly. And that lack of accountability and empathy.
Right.
That's a huge obstacle to reconciliation. It suggests that he doesn't really understand the impact of his actions. Or worse, he feels justified in his behavior.
It's just so hard to fathom.
Yeah.
How could you claim to love someone
right.
and yet take such pleasure in their suffering?
Right.
It just seems so contradictory.
It is. And that's why it's so important to recognize that love and abuse can coexist.
Right.
An abuser can genuinely have feelings for their partner, but those feelings are often intertwined with insecurity, a need for control, and a distorted sense of entitlement.
So, like, in this case, is there any hope for them to repair their relationship?
It's definitely possible, but it would require a significant shift in the husband's behavior and attitude. He'd need to acknowledge the harm he's caused, take full responsibility for his actions, and commit to genuine change.
Yeah.
And even then, the wife might decide that the trust is irrevocably broken.
Yeah. In her final update, she said that she was focusing on her daughter.
Okay.
And taking things one day at a time. She didn't mention counseling or any possibility of getting back together with her husband.
That's understandable. She's been through a lot.
Yeah.
And right now, her priority is likely her own emotional well-being and the safety of her child.
Right.
She might decide later on to explore couples therapy.
Yeah.
But that's a decision she needs to make for herself when she's ready.
Yeah. It makes you wonder about the long-term impact this will have on her daughter.
Of course.
She witnessed her father engaging in this manipulative and emotionally abusive behavior.
Children are incredibly perceptive. They absorb the dynamics they see playing out around them, even if they don't fully understand what's happening.
Right.
Witnessing a parent being abused can have a profound impact on their emotional development, their sense of self-worth, and their future relationships.
So what can the woman do to protect her daughter and help her process this whole experience?
Seeking professional help is crucial. A therapist who specializes in childhood trauma can provide support and guidance. As they navigate the healing process, it's also important to create a safe and stable environment for the child.
Right.
Where she feels loved, supported, and free to express her emotions.
This whole story is a stark reminder that abuse can happen anywhere to anyone.
It's true. It's often hidden behind closed doors, and victims can feel trapped and alone.
Right. And that's why it's so vital to talk about these issues openly and honestly.
Absolutely. The more we raise awareness, the more we can empower victims to speak out and seek help.
Right.
And for those who are struggling in silence, please remember that you're not alone. There are resources available like the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which you can call or text 247.
This deep dive has definitely been a tough one.
It has.
But it's also been incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
It's made me think differently about the dynamics of relationships and the importance of recognizing the red flags of abuse.
It's easy to get caught up in the drama of a story like this.
Right.
But it's crucial to remember that real lives are at stake. The woman in this story showed incredible courage in sharing her experience and seeking support.
And hopefully, by talking about it, we can help others.
Absolutely.
Who might be going through something similar.
Knowledge is power. The more we understand about the complexities of loss, the better equipped we are to recognize it, intervene, and support those who are affected by it. So today we're going to be looking at a story that originated on the relationship advice subreddit. And actually, I think it first got attention over on the Best of Reddit Updates subreddit.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, this is one of those that starts off pretty normal and then takes a really wild turn.
I love those.
Oh yeah, me too.
The ones that start out so mundane and then...
Yeah, and you just get sucked in.
Yeah, exactly.
So, are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely, let's do it.
I just got an email on my husband's iPad that the hot water in his apartment building was going to be shut down temporarily for repairs. We own our own house and have not rented for over a decade. My husband is on a trip with one of our sons and his brother to go visit their mother, my son's grandmother. I was cleaning up the den when an email notification popped up on his iPad. It was an email from an apartment complex that they were going to be temporarily closing down the hot water for repairs, sent from one of those automatic senders that you can't reply to. It was addressed to my husband with his first and last name. The thing is, we own our house. We haven't rented in over 10 years, and even then, it wasn't this place. Where my husband is, upstate New York, there isn't any service. I tried to send him a picture of the email, but it won't go through. I called him and spoke to him for a bit. Service was choppy, but I managed to explain to him about the email, and basically all he said is that it must be a mistake and they had the wrong email. We weren't able to say much before the call just dropped. But if it was a wrong email, how would they have his first and last name all spelled correctly? For context, his first name is somewhat common, but our last name isn't common, especially in this area. There weren't any other emails from this sender or about this apartment complex in my husband's emails. But he is also the kind who clears out his inbox as he gets messages. I sent a message to the apartment complex telling them that I think my husband was on their email list by mistake. But I just got an automatic email sent back that they were out of the office until 10:20, and then general rent information pricing, 1-bedroom $1,600, 2-bedroom $900, and that there were no open units available. There was no unit number on the email, but the complex is about 15 minutes away from our house. So I went and I drove by, which I guess might be a little crazy, I know. I didn't see anything, not like I knew what to expect. It's a group of buildings, less than 100 apartments in all. I don't have any reason to mistrust my husband other than this weird email that gives me a strange feeling in the pit of my stomach, as well as a general feeling of paranoia that he's just been bored with me. I've been feeling this way for a little while, but he insists I'm imagining it and that he's happy. I only brought it up to him once when I was feeling particularly insecure last year. We still do things together, he still tells me he loves me, etc. I just feel like he doesn't have as much fun with me as he used to. And like he looks for reasons to be out of the house or doing things specifically with the boys instead of doing things with the whole family. It's not like it's something that bothers me every day, just something that I think about when I'm feeling insecure or paranoid. Like in a situation like this, where he gets an email from random apartment complexes, lol. Anyway, I don't know exactly what advice I'm looking for. I know the advice I would have for one of my friends would be just to talk to him, but I really can't do that until he comes home on Saturday, which is a really long time for me to sit with my intrusive thoughts. Edit. He never lived here in the past. He lived with his parents until college, and then lived in a dorm, and then every place he rented was with me. We've been dating since we were 19. Edit 2. The email wasn't a phishing scam. It was a legitimate email from the email address on the apartment complex's website. All of the information included in the email letterhead matched the information on the apartment complex's website. And if it was a phishing scam, I assume they would have been looking for information. This email wasn't looking for anything. It was just an informational email about the water. Update.
My best friend called the emergency maintenance number and said that she was a delivery driver who had over $100 worth of food for, and said my husband's name, but said he had forgotten to fill in his apartment number. The guy didn't speak English very well, but after she repeated herself a few times, he did eventually say his name and then told us an apartment number. Update. Sorry about the late update. My post was locked by the time I got to it. I'm currently writing this on the ride upstate. Yesterday, I posted about an email I had gotten on my husband's email from an apartment complex talking about fixing the water. My husband, who is upstate visiting his mother until Saturday, has next to no cell service, so I haven't been able to talk to him about any of this, other than saying that the email must have been a mix-up. My friend called and got his apartment number from the maintenance man. Both of us went over to the apartment and my friend knocked. A girl answered but didn't answer the door, just the bell camera. My friend said she was there looking for Adam. The girl said that Adam wasn't there, but wouldn't give her more information than that, which I get. My friend was just a total stranger at her door. When we left, I could see her looking out the apartment window at us. I tried to call my husband 1,000 times yesterday, and nothing went through. The few times the call did pick up, the service was so bad, you could barely hear anything. So I'm headed upstate to confront him in person. I have a copy of the email, as well as a photo of the apartment, as well as a recording of the girl saying that Adam wasn't there, which is a confirmation to me that she knows him. If this is somehow all a big misunderstanding, I'm going to have my husband explain it to me in person, instead of waiting until he comes home. I haven't gotten a chance to read all the comments, but I will go through them now and try to respond to what I can. I haven't slept, so I hope this makes sense. Edit. To everyone telling me that I should just wait, not confront him, talk to her first. He's my husband. He's the father of my children. If I'm going to find out that he's cheating on me, it is going to be from him. I'm going to say this for the last time. Please, stop advising me not to go talk to my husband about this very serious situation that we are in. I will go talk to a lawyer if need be. However, we have been married for over a decade. We have a family and a life together. I am going to go talk to him. I understand what the situation probably is. I understand that he's probably going to try to lie to me. I'm not a moron. Update 2. I'm writing this from a hotel room. I went to confront my husband. He knew the minute my car pulled up what was going on. He came outside to meet me, and the first thing he said was, "Did you go to the apartment?" And I told him, yeah. So then he said, "So I guess we have to have a talk." And again I said, yeah. I'm not going to get into the exact details of it. It was a long talk, and it involved a lot of emotions. She is his girlfriend. They've been together for 4 months. She is under the impression that we are separated and going through the divorce process. His family wasn't aware of this. His brother and mother who were there were horrified. I'm sorry, I don't have more to say. I've already contacted a divorce lawyer, a therapist, and a financial advisor. Thanks to everyone for your support.
Okay, so our OOP, she's at home, and her husband is on a trip.
Okay.
He's upstate with their son and his brother visiting his mother. Mm-hmm. And she's just kind of tidying up the house and doing some chores, and she sees an email pop up on her husband's iPad.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and at first glance, it seems totally harmless, like nothing to worry about at all.
Okay.
It's just an email from an apartment complex.
Okay.
And it's informing residents about a temporary hot water shutdown.
Okay, wait, so what's the issue?
Well, the thing is, she and her husband own their home. They haven't rented an apartment in over a decade.
So why is he getting emails?
Exactly. And that's where the alarm bells start to ring.
Right.
And if that wasn't suspicious enough, the email is addressed to her husband using his full name.
Okay.
Spelled correctly.
Wow.
And she even mentions that their last name is very uncommon. So it's not like it's just a common name.
Right. It's not like a John Smith getting the wrong email.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really unlikely that this is just some random mistake.
So what does she do?
Well, she tries to reach her husband, get in touch with him and ask him about it.
Of course.
But he's upstate, remember, and cell service is really spotty.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So they finally do connect, but the call is all choppy, and all he can say is that it must be a mistake.
I don't know. I'd be pretty suspicious at that point.
Yeah, I mean, how do they get his name right if it's just a random email?
Yeah, and a full name and an uncommon last name.
That's what I'm saying. So OOP is not convinced.
Okay, so what does she do next?
Well, she's starting to question things like, has he been distant lately? Is there something she's missed?
Right, like has he been acting strange? Has he been gone a lot?
Yeah, she even mentions this growing feeling that maybe he's just bored with her.
That's got to be a tough feeling.
Oh, absolutely. It's like all these insecurities start bubbling up to the surface.
Yeah, when you start questioning everything.
Yeah, and to make things worse, she remembers that he has been spending more time out of the house lately, or like doing things just with the kids.
Oh, so it's like all these little things that she maybe didn't think much of at the time are suddenly adding up.
Exactly. It's like this email just triggered all these underlying anxieties.
Wow. So what does she do with all this anxiety?
Well, she tries to investigate on her own.
Okay. How does she do that?
So she sends an email to the apartment complex.
Makes sense.
You know, trying to get some more information.
Yeah.
But all she gets back is an automated response.
Oh, no.
Saying they're out of the office until later.
So no help there.
Nope. So now she's stuck with this nagging feeling of doubt and this burning curiosity.
Yeah, she has to find out more.
Oh, yeah. And you know what she does?
Yeah.
She decides to drive by the apartment complex.
What? Really?
Yeah, she just gets in her car and goes.
I love it.
I mean, it's only like 15 minutes away from their house.
Okay, but she doesn't even know what she's looking for.
No, she really doesn't.
Just a bunch of buildings.
Yeah, it's like less than 100 apartments total.
But she still goes.
She does, and it's at this point that she realizes she still has no concrete reason to distrust her husband other than this strange email.
Right.
But that gut feeling, you know.
Yeah, you can't ignore that.
It's hard to shake, so feeling lost and unsure. She does what a lot of us probably would do in this situation.
What's that?
She turns to the internet for advice.
Of course, Reddit.
Yep. She posts her whole dilemma on the relationship advice subreddit.
And that's when things get really interesting, right?
Oh, yeah, that's where the story takes a turn. Buckle up.
I'm ready for it.
Okay, so the Reddit community, you know, they come through with some pretty creative suggestions.
Oh, I bet they did. Reddit always has some interesting advice.
Yeah. Like some people were saying, you know, dig deeper, try to confirm if the email's even legitimate.
Okay.
Others were saying, just wait for the husband to come home and confront him directly.
Right.
But then there's this one commenter who comes up with a really ingenious plan.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So they suggest calling the apartment complex's emergency maintenance line.
Okay.
And pretending to be a delivery getter.
Okay.
With a large food order for her husband.
Sneaky.
Right. But here's the catch. The driver forgot the apartment number.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Right.
I love it.
So OOP's best friend actually puts this plan into action.
No way.
And believe it or not, it works.
You're kidding?
The maintenance person who doesn't speak English very well is a little confused at first.
I can imagine.
But they eventually provide the apartment number.
Wow, so now they have the apartment number.
Yep. And OOP has a big decision to make.
Does she wait for her husband to come home?
Or does she take a bolder approach?
Ooh, I can't wait to find out.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So last time we left off, OOP had just gotten the apartment number.
Yeah, from that sneaky phone call.
Exactly. So she's got this crucial piece of the puzzle now, but as we all know, in a good mystery, one answer often leads to like even more questions, you know?
Oh yeah, totally. And in this case, it leads to some serious action.
So remember, OOP is still upstate, right?
Right, with her husband.
Dealing with that terrible cell service.
Oh yeah, hey, when that happens.
And that growing sense of urgency.
Totally, she has to know what's going on.
So instead of waiting, she decides to just go for it.
What does she do?
So she and her friend decide to pay a visit to the apartment.
No way she goes there.
Oh yeah, they just drive over.
I love it.
It's like the internet sleuthing just turned into a real-life detective mission.
So what happens when they get there?
So OP's friend knocks on the door and a young woman answers.
Through the door.
Well, just through the bell camera, actually.
Okay.
And you can just imagine the tension in this moment.
Oh, yeah. I bet it was intense.
So OP's friend, you know, trying to stay calm.
Of course.
So she's looking for Adam.
Opie's husband.
Yep. And the woman at the door just replies, Adam's not here.
Doesn't give any more information.
Nope, refuses to say anything else.
Well, that's suspicious.
Right, and as they're leaving, OOP and her friend see the woman peering at them from the apartment window.
Oh, she's definitely hiding something.
Right, so at this point, OOP is desperate for answers.
Yeah.
So she tries calling her husband, like, over and over again.
But the cell service.
It's so bad the few calls that do connect immediately drop.
Oh man, that's the worst.
I know, it's like hitting a wall just when she was getting somewhere.
So frustrating.
But Ooki, she's not one to give up easily.
Nope. She's determined.
So that's when she makes a bold move.
What's that?
She decides to drive upstate and confront her husband face to face.
Well, hold on. His family's there, right?
Oh yeah, his mom and his brother.
So she's walking into a potential family drama.
Yeah, it's like she's stepping into the lion's den.
This is intense.
So OOP packs a bag, gathers all her evidence, the email, the picture of the apartment building, the recording of the woman at the door.
Wow, she's going all in.
Oh yeah, and then she hits the road.
I can't believe she just drives up there.
I know, it's a gutsy move.
So many people in the Reddit comments were telling her to wait, but she's like, nope, I need answers now.
Exactly, she's taking control of the situation.
So what happens when she gets there?
Well, in her final Reddit update, she says she arrives at her mother-in-law's house, and her husband immediately knows why she's there.
No way, he just knows.
Yeah, he even asks her, did you go to the apartment?
Wow, so he was expecting her.
Like, he knew she was going to find out.
It's like the jig is up.
Yep, no point in denying it anymore.
So what happens next?
So OOP, she doesn't hold back.
Good for her.
She lays it all out there. She doesn't go into the specific details of the conversation in her Reddit post.
Okay.
She does reveal the bombshell. The woman at the apartment is her husband's girlfriend.
Wow, there it is.
The mystery is solved.
But now what?
And it gets even worse.
What do you mean?
So the girlfriend thinks that OOP and her husband are separated and in the process of getting a divorce.
What? No way.
Yeah, it was a complete lie.
So he was lying to both of them.
Exactly. It's just layers of deception.
Wow, this guy.
And get this, OP mentions that her husband's mother and brother were also present during this whole confrontation.
Oh no, talk about awkward.
And they were just as shocked by the revelation as she was.
So the whole family's involved now.
Family drama unfolding in real time.
This is crazy.
And that's where OOP ends her Reddit update.
Why, she just leaves us hanging?
She mentions that she's in contact with a divorce lawyer, a therapist, and a financial advisor.
Okay, so she's taking steps to move forward.
But the rest is left to our imaginations.
Of course, the Reddit community is going wild with speculation.
Oh yeah, everyone's trying to figure out what happened next.
Especially with the whole financial aspect.
Right, remember earlier in the story, OOP mentions that her husband owns his own company?
Yeah, and that he has access to company finances.
Which she doesn't.
So there's the potential for him to have been using company money for this whole other life.
Exactly, and the Reddit comments are full of theories about embezzlement and misuse of funds.
It adds a whole other layer of legal trouble to the situation.
Definitely. It's like this whole story just keeps getting more and more complicated.
I know, it's wild.
So that brings us to the end of this chapter in our deep dive.
From a mysterious email to a full-blown family confrontation.
Uncovering a web of lies and betrayal.
But this isn't the end of the story.
We'll unpack the aftermath and explore some of the broader themes in the final part of our deep dive.
Wow, this deep dive has been quite the journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
So we started with just a simple email about hot water.
Right.
And ended up uncovering this whole tangled web of infidelity and internet sleuthing.
And family drama.
Oh yeah, a whole family reckoning.
It's crazy how it all unfolded.
It really is. And
yeah.
Even though OOP gave us those crucial updates on Reddit,
the story kind of ends abruptly.
It does.
It leaves us with so many questions,
Yeah, like what happened after that confrontation at the mother-in-law's house?
Exactly. And did the girlfriend even believe her husband's explanation?
Right. Like, did he try to convince her that they were actually separated?
And how did his family react?
Yeah. Did they support him, or were they just as angry and disappointed as OP?
And then there's the whole financial side of things.
Oh, yeah. The potential misuse of company funds.
That's a big one.
Like, what were the long-term consequences of his actions?
Both legally and personally.
It makes you wonder if he ever faced any charges, or if his company went under.
And we may never know all the details.
Right.
But I think that lack of closure is actually pretty thought-provoking.
It is. It forces us to think about how complex relationships can be.
And the lasting impact of betrayal.
Definitely.
And, this story really resonated with a lot of people online.
It did. It went viral.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because it reminds us that even in this day and age, with everyone being so connected, secrets can still be kept.
Yeah, and the truth can be a lot messier than we might expect.
Absolutely. It's not always a clean resolution.
And it makes you think about the role the internet plays in our lives.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, on one hand, OOP was able to get advice from complete strangers.
And find that clever way to get the apartment number.
All thanks to Reddit.
The power of the internet.
Right. But then on the other hand,
there's the potential for judgment and speculation.
Even harassment from anonymous commenters.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
It is, and we need to be mindful of that.
Definitely.
Well, this whole deep dive has been quite a ride.
It has twists and turns and surprises.
It's like truth is stranger than fiction sometimes.
You never know what's going to happen.
So as we wrap up this episode, we want to leave you with a final thought.
What's that?
How would you have reacted if you were in OOP's shoes?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is. And what does this story tell us about love, trust, and betrayal in the digital age?
It's a lot to think about.
It is. Okay, so get ready for this one because, wow, this Reddit story that you sent over, it's got everyone talking.
Yeah.
It's about a husband whose wife, they've been married for 7 years.
Right.
She ends up leaving him for this guy. She met him at the gym.
Uh-huh.
And get this all happens like 3 weeks after her brother died in her arms.
Wow.
I mean, the timing, it's just crazy. It really makes you wonder if grief can really make people completely change their lives like that.
It is strange, the timing.
Yeah, and then on Reddit, there's all this talk about maybe the wife has bipolar disorder that hasn't been diagnosed.
Yeah.
Especially because there's a family history of it.
Right.
So I figured we could take a deep dive into this one together and see what we think.
My wife, together 12, married 7, is leaving me for someone she has known 3 months. A slight preface. My wife and her brother were very close when young. He got very into alcohol, went to prison for 10 years, went immediately back to drinking, then died in front of her. My wife, 30 female, and I, 33 male, started going to the gym together. We were loving the results of the fitness. It made sex even better, and we couldn't keep our hands off each other. We felt as happy and close as ever. 3 weeks after her brother died, this guy chats her up at the gym, and she immediately clicks with him. I was wary, but I trusted my wife. She is a sweetheart and never imagined her having the ability to have an affair. Last weekend we had one of the most romantic days and evenings we have had in a while. This week she decides that she cannot go on without finding out why she developed such a quick connection with this guy. We own a house and 3 pets. Her family and everyone we know are devastated and blown away, but she is dead serious. The woman I knew last week even, has left the building. This is a living nightmare that I just want to wake up from. We did couples counseling 3 times and have one schedule on Wednesday, but she has completely made up her mind and seems to have rapidly fell out of love with me. My life as I had known it is over. I just needed to get this all off my chest. Edit. Wow. Thank you everybody for the responses. I did not expect such an outpour of support. I am reading every comment. Update. I had a kind Redditor reach out to me over the weekend, asking how I was doing regarding the above situation. The original post got a lot of attention, so I figured I would give an update. My wife filed for divorce a month after moving out. During this time, I did the whole online dating thing, which was way worse than I could have ever expected. Kept myself busy working out, building my own confidence, hanging out with friends. In general, it was horrible, but I was trying to keep my head up. I was in therapy. Didn't jive with my first therapist, found a new one in December, who I liked a lot more, and am still seeing her. Mid-December, my wife calls me, crying, asking if she can stay in the guest bedroom because she has nowhere to go. I say yes. Even though she hurt me so badly, I did still love her. So things with guy at the gym turned very toxic very fast. I know the word narcissist gets thrown around a lot these days. This guy, though. It's hard to believe these subhuman pieces of trash actually exist. So she stays in the guest bedroom for a week, then goes and stays at her parents' for a month. She had a nervous breakdown and was able to get a medical leave of absence from her work. Mid-January comes around, and she is back at the house, but still in a very frantic and erratic state, sort of like she was withdrawing off hard drugs. I had no idea about the addictive nature of toxic relationships. It's a psychological clusterfuck. She is clear that she is too fucked up in the head to be in a relationship and is going to work on herself. I give her the time and space she requested. She goes all in on learning about the psychology of all of this shit. Inner child work, how the nervous system reacts and attracts you to toxic people if you grew up in a toxic household. Anxious and avoidant attachment styles. There's this book called How to Stay Married. where the wife had an affair, and it turns out the root of the issue was her unresolved childhood trauma. Long story short, same thing happened here. It hurts, but I can forgive her. She is my best friend, and we are insanely compatible in a lot of ways. She has really been returning to herself the past month. She is the happiest I have seen in her at least a year. And last week we filed the paperwork to dismiss the divorce. We are both in individual counseling and soon to start couples therapy. I am sure a lot of people will think I am making a mistake in reconciling, but I am happy. I do trust her that she now has the knowledge to not let this happen again, and she has the drive to become the best person she can be. Edit. I am reading all the comments and taking everything to heart, even especially the ones calling me stupid, chump, doormat. I completely understand where you are coming from. I just don't have time or desire to respond to so much. I want things to work out and do trust my gut that this was a one-time thing. I will post an update and take all of the I told you so if it comes to that.
So basically we have this couple. They've been together for 12 years, married for 7.
Okay.
And they seemed happy, like they were even going to the gym together and everything. Then, out of nowhere, her brother tragically passes away.
Oh, wow.
And just 3 weeks later, she meets this new guy at the gym, and like instantly she feels this connection with him.
Oh, wow.
And then within a couple of months, she decides to leave her husband to, see where this new relationship goes.
It's like she did a total 180. It's like something just snapped. They're having a romantic evening, and then bam, she's packing her bags.
Exactly.
It's no wonder people on Reddit are like questioning her motives and trying to figure out what's really going on.
Yeah, at first, a lot of people on Reddit were saying she was selfish and a cheater.
Mm-hmm.
But then someone posted this really insightful comment that, suggested a totally different way of looking at it. Like, what if it wasn't about the new guy at all? What if it was like a self-destructive trauma response? Like the idea that subconsciously she might be sabotaging her life because she's just overwhelmed with grief from losing her brother.
Yeah, that comment, that one really got me thinking too.
Me too.
It makes you wonder if it really wasn't about the new guy, but more like a deeper, more complicated reaction to the loss,
Right.
And the fact that the husband felt the same way about that comment, it seems like it gave him a way to understand what his wife did without blaming her.
Yeah.
It might have even been why they decided to separate but not actually get divorced. Like they wanted to stay friends even though everything was so messed up.
I think that's a lot more understanding than what we usually see in these situations.
Definitely.
It shows they have empathy for each other and are willing to look beyond the surface.
For sure.
But then, just when you think things couldn't get more complicated, there's another twist.
Oh no, what now?
8 months into the separation, the wife's new relationship totally implodes, like it just falls apart.
Oh, wow.
It turns out the gym guy is abusive, and she ends up having a nervous breakdown.
Oh my gosh, that's awful. So she leaves a marriage that seemed stable for this new relationship, and it ends up like that.
Exactly.
That's so sad.
And then she moves back in with her husband.
Wow.
But she stays in the guest bedroom at first.
Okay, so at this point, is that when everyone on Reddit starts talking about bipolar disorder?
Yeah, well, you have to remember that the husband had mentioned that bipolar disorder runs in her family.
Oh, right.
Like, her father and grandfather both had it. And apparently, their symptoms started showing up when they were around 30.
Okay.
And guess what? The wife is in her 30s right now.
Oh, wow. So the timing matches up almost perfectly.
Yeah.
It can't just be a coincidence, can it?
No, it definitely raises some serious questions.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you think about how she was acting during this time, like she was doing all these frantic and erratic things, almost like withdrawal symptoms, And then on top of that, she's dealing with the grief of losing her brother. It's like a perfect storm for a mental health episode.
It seems like we're starting to see the bigger picture here, right? It's not just about cheating. There's the grief, maybe a mental health condition that hasn't been diagnosed, the toxic relationship with the gym guy. It's all connected.
Exactly.
What I find really interesting is how the husband is handling all of this. It's so complicated, and he even tried online dating during the separation.
Yeah, and he actually said that online dating felt super shallow compared to what he had with his wife in their marriage.
Wow.
It seems like even after everything, he still really cares about her.
He does seem incredibly compassionate, although some people on Reddit weren't too impressed. They were calling him a doormat.
Yeah.
I guess it's easy to judge when you're not in the situation, but it seems like he's trying his best to be understanding.
And to be fair, the wife wasn't just sitting around doing nothing during this time.
Oh, yeah.
She really threw herself into self-help and therapy.
Good for her.
She was specifically focusing on inner child work, trying to understand how her nervous system reacts to things, and even exploring different attachment styles.
Wow, so she's really trying to understand herself and why she does the things she does.
It's like she's trying to put together the pieces of a puzzle, but it's her own life, you know?
Yeah, I get it.
Actually, somebody mentioned this book in the Reddit thread, How to Stay Married.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
It talks about how infidelity can be connected to childhood trauma, which kind of fits with what the wife is exploring in therapy.
Yeah, that's a really interesting connection.
And in the end, it seems like all the work she did on herself was a big part of why they decided to call off the divorce and try to get back together.
Wow.
They both committed to doing individual therapy and couples therapy.
That's great.
And her husband really believed that she was truly changing and becoming more self-aware.
I can't even imagine how hard that decision must have been. And of course, people on Reddit had a lot to say about it.
I bet.
Some people thought it was great that he was being so compassionate, but others were worried that he was setting himself up to get hurt again.
Yeah, that's a valid concern, especially with everything they've been through.
It really leaves us hanging, doesn't it? Will they make it work this time, or is this just the calm before the storm?
Well, we'll have to look at that final update and see what happened.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Okay.
So we left off with the husband and wife deciding to give it another shot, and from the updates you shared, it sounds like he was, I don't know, maybe hopeful, but also a little cautious.
Right.
He seems to really believe that she's changed, but he's also set some pretty firm boundaries, you know, like being able to see her phone and making sure she keeps going to therapy.
Yeah, it sounds like he's trying to build back that trust, which makes sense.
Definitely. But I gotta say, reading through those Reddit comments, I couldn't shake this feeling like something bad was gonna happen.
Right.
So many people were convinced that she would go back to the gym guy.
It is understandable why people would be skeptical.
Yeah.
I mean, the foundation of their marriage was completely shattered, first by this incredibly traumatic event, and then the affair.
Right.
Even with therapy and all the self-awareness, the road to recovery isn't always easy.
Definitely not.
Trauma can stick around for a long time.
Yeah.
And those old patterns, they can come back when you least expect it.
It's like everyone was just waiting for everything to fall apart.
Yeah.
And, well, that's kind of what happens in the final update.
Oh, no.
It's short, but man, is it heartbreaking.
What happened?
The husband just says that his wife, she reached out to the gym guy. She told him that she missed him and wanted to start talking again.
Oh, wow. After all that, after all the therapy and the self-reflection and trying to rebuild the trust, she still goes back to him.
It just doesn't make sense, does it?
It's important to remember that healing, especially when you're dealing with something like bipolar disorder, it's not a straight line.
Right.
There are going to be setbacks, moments of weakness, and sometimes you just feel pulled back to those familiar patterns, even if they're destructive.
It makes those Reddit comments about the husband being a doormat seem almost, I don't know, like they saw this coming.
Yeah, I mean, their concerns were valid.
For sure.
Compassion and forgiveness are great, but you got to be careful not to cross the line between supporting someone and enabling their harmful behavior.
And it seems like that line might have gotten blurred here.
Yeah.
It's a tough lesson to learn, and it's got to be just devastating for the husband. He put so much hope into this reconciliation.
Right. He really believed that she was changing this time.
Yeah, he even said he felt completely exhausted, like his heart was being trampled on over and over again.
It sounds like it just became too much for him.
It really does, and this all leads to a really tough question. Is there ever a right way to deal with infidelity and trying to get back together, especially when there's trauma and mental health issues involved?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This whole story just shows how complicated and messy human relationships can be.
Yeah.
There's no easy fix, no magic solution.
No.
It's this constant back and forth between forgiveness and trying to protect yourself and trying to understand the other person.
And sometimes even when you try your hardest, things still fall apart.
It's a harsh reality, for sure.
This deep dive has definitely been a roller coaster of emotions.
Oh, yeah.
From that initial shock when we first heard what happened to cautiously hoping things would work out. And now, I don't know, it's like a mix of disappointment and maybe even a little despair.
It really makes you think about how love and loss and mental health are all intertwined, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There's no clear-cut villain or hero here, just real people trying to deal with incredibly difficult and painful situations. It really makes you think twice about those simple explanations we hear about cheating, you know?
Yeah.
It forces you to look at the gray areas,
Right.
the little details of why people do things, especially when someone's going through so much pain and might have mental health stuff they're not dealing with.
Absolutely. We tend to label people like cheater or victim.
Yeah.
But this situation shows how those labels just don't cover it.
Right.
There's always a deeper story.
It reminds me of that saying, you never really know what someone else is going through.
Yeah.
We judge people based on what we see them do, but we rarely see the whole picture of what's going on inside. The struggles, the trauma, all the mental and emotional baggage they might be carrying.
And if you look at how people reacted on Reddit, you can see that whole range of perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You have people judging and name-calling.
Yeah.
And then you have people genuinely trying to understand why the wife did what she did, considering her grief and the possibility of bipolar disorder.
It's like a little example of how we deal with these tough issues as a society.
It really is. It's like this constant push and pull between holding people responsible for what they do.
Right.
And understanding that sometimes things are happening that are out of their control, you know.
It's a tough balance, especially with something as emotional as infidelity.
The question is, how can we handle these situations with more understanding?
Yeah.
How can we acknowledge the hurt and betrayal?
Right.
While also understanding that things like trauma and mental health can play a big part in someone's decisions.
It's not about saying it's okay to hurt other people. It's about trying to see the whole picture of what might be going on.
Exactly.
Honestly, after this deep dive, I have more questions than answers.
Really?
But in a way, I think that's a good thing.
How so?
It's made me even more curious about how trauma, mental health, and relationships all connect.
That's great.
I want to learn more, challenge my own assumptions.
I think that's what's so great about really digging deep into a complex topic.
Yeah.
It's not about getting the right answer. It's about learning more about what it means to be human, understanding that things aren't always black and white, and realizing that sometimes there just isn't a simple solution.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious what your takeaways are from this story. Does understanding how trauma and mental health can affect people change how you view infidelity and reconciliation?
Yeah, definitely. It makes you think twice.
Right.
And those judgments we make about people, it makes you question those.
For sure.
I hope this conversation has given your listeners something to think about. Some new ways to look at these complicated and often messy parts of relationships.
Me too.
It's a good reminder that behind every story, every headline, every Reddit post about heartbreak, there are real people struggling with things we might never fully understand.
It's about seeing that complexity.
Yeah.
Understanding that sometimes those struggles lead people to hurt others.
Exactly.
And trying to be more empathetic and understanding in a world that's so quick to judge. You guys sent in this Reddit post straight from the AmITheAsshole forum. And, well, let's just say the internet is having a field day with this one.
Yeah, these always get people riled up.
They really do. So today, we're going to break it all down, look at it from every angle, and see if we can figure out, is this husband really the a-hole? But more importantly, what can we all learn from this, you know, about family dynamics and how things can get complicated, especially with a new baby on the way?
Oh, for sure. These kinds of situations can really bring out the best and the worst in families.
Am I the asshole for telling my mom she won't be able to see my daughter for 2 months after she's born if she calls my wife to complain about her birth plan again? 33 male. My wife is currently 7 months pregnant with our daughter. The first time she was pregnant, she went into premature labor and had a stillbirth. It was a devastating experience for both of us, but especially my sweet wife. She's finally getting excited about this pregnancy. But there is a part of her that is afraid to get her hopes up in case something goes wrong. She asks me several times a day if I think something will happen, and has been having nightmares about having another stillbirth. Luckily, her doctor says everything is going well so far, and I'm confident everything will work out okay this time. My wife and I are from the same town, but live around 9 hours driving distance from our families. Right now, the plan is for my wife's mother to drive up once my wife goes into labor. She's going to support my wife during the labor and also stay for a week or so after the baby is born to help us get settled. My wife explicitly said that she doesn't want any visitors aside from her mom for the first few weeks after the baby is born. She told me wants my family to visit a few weeks after the baby is born, and even said my parents could stay in the guest room so they get more quality time with their granddaughter once we're ready for visitors. I truly just want this process to go as smoothly as possible for my wife in light of what she went through the last time around. And so I'm 100% behind whatever plan makes her feel the most comfortable. Yesterday, I got a call from my mom asking about the birth plan. I explained our current plan, and my mom said that she and my dad would drive up once my wife goes into labor. She didn't mention being in the delivery room, but said they'd be in the waiting room to meet their granddaughter. She also said they'd stay at a hotel nearby, and so they could spend time with the baby once she's home. I told my mom that we're excited for her to come up and meet the baby, but we'd prefer if she wait a few weeks until we're settled. My mom said that my mother-in-law is coming up right after the birth, and so she doesn't understand why she can't be there. I explained that my mother-in-law is there to support my wife during the labor and help her get settled after the baby is born. I added that my wife obviously feels more comfortable with her mom and doesn't feel pressure to have the house spotless and be the perfect hostess when her mom comes over. I also said that we want her and my dad to get a lot of time with the baby, and we don't know how my wife is going to be feeling immediately after the birth. My mom started rambling about how boy's mom always gets the short end of the stick and everyone should be included when it comes to major milestones, like the birth of a child. The funny thing is that my younger sister had her first baby about 6 months ago. She can't stand her mother-in-law, and she still hasn't given her the green light to come and visit. My mom and my sister have both justified this by saying her mother-in-law is rude and difficult to be around. This is true, but also my sister holds grudges and doesn't get along with most relatives. I responded to my mom by asking why she's okay with my sister keeping her baby away from her mother-in-law for 6 months if everyone should be included. My mom was furious. She said that there was more to the situation than I realize, and that this situation is completely different since she's always been perfectly nice to my wife. I asked what I was missing, and my mom just said that my sister's mother-in-law ruined her bridal shower by bringing her obnoxious friends. I said, regardless of the situation, I want to make this experience as stress-free as possible for my wife, given what happened last time. I said that she just wants me and my mom for a while, and I understand her perspective. I told my mom I love her and am excited for her to visit, and will make sure she gets plenty of time with her granddaughter. She seemed disappointed, but I thought we were on the same page. A few hours ago, my wife told me that she got a call from my mother. She said my mom was crying and saying she felt excluded and like we didn't want her to meet the baby. My wife is a sweetheart and a people pleaser, and she truly took this to heart. She seemed stressed and asked me if we were doing the right thing. I told my wife I wanted her to feel as comfortable as possible and that I'd deal with my mom moving forward. I was furious, to say the least. The stress isn't good for my wife, and she's already under a lot of it because of her fears that history will repeat itself. I called my mom back and told her that if she calls my wife about the situation again, she won't get to see the baby for 2 months. I said I'd add a month for every call after that. I meant this kind of as a joke, but I was being serious that she can't be putting the stress on my wife right now. My mom said we were excluding her and my father, and that they raised me better than this. My dad called and said I was wrong to give my mom an ultimatum and punish her for expressing her feelings. He said that I was using time with the baby as a form of control. I explained that I want them to have a good relationship with my kid, but I desperately don't want any extra stress on my wife right now. My dad says I owe my mom an apology for saying I'll add months to the wait time every time she speaks to my wife about the birth plan. I disagree. Am I the asshole?
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. We've got a soon-to-be dad, we'll call him OP, like they do on Reddit, and his pregnant wife.
Right.
They're getting ready to welcome their first little one. Well, actually, technically, it's their second.
Oh, right. Okay.
And that's where things get a little bit heartbreaking. OP's wife is dealing with anxiety stemming from a previous stillbirth.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that's completely understandable given the circumstances.
It's tough. And I think it just adds this whole other layer of, delicateness to the situation.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of creating a supportive and stress-free environment during pregnancy.
For sure. So they come up with a plan. The wife's mother will be there for the birth and the immediate postpartum period, which, seems pretty standard.
Yeah, totally. Having that extra support, especially from someone you trust, can be so valuable during that time.
Exactly. And then a bit later down the line, OP's parents are scheduled to visit a few weeks after the baby is born.
Okay.
Even offering to stay in the guest room for some extended bonding time.
Sounds good so far, right?
Right. Everyone's on the same page. All good. But that's when things take a turn.
Oh, here we go.
Enter the mother-in-law, MIL for short.
The MIL, always a classic character in these family dramas.
So MIL calls up OP seemingly to chat about the birth plan, but it quickly becomes clear that she has a different agenda.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she just casually mentions that she and OP's dad will be driving up as soon as labor starts, expecting to be at the hospital, right away.
Wow. Okay, so not quite the plan.
Not quite, no. And then to justify this, she's like, well, everyone should be included in these big milestones.
Everyone should be included. But here's the thing. She's totally okay with her own daughter excluding her mother-in-law from seeing her grandchild for 6 months.
Wait, well, hold on. So it's everyone should be included unless it's her own, comfort.
Right. It's a double standard for sure. And it kind of makes you question, is this really about being included or is it more about control?
That's a good question. And when OP points this out to her, things get a little bit heated. She gets all defensive and she claims that her daughter's situation is different, because her Millie was rude at a bridal shower years ago.
The classic, but she did this defense.
Right. But of course, she has always been perfectly nice to OP's wife.
Seems a little manipulative, don't you think? Trying to shift the blame and play the victim?
It definitely raises some red flags for me. But wait, it gets even better. MIL then decides to bypass OP completely and call his pregnant wife directly.
Oh no, directly. That's not good.
Nope. And it's not one of those happy, congratulations, we're so excited kind of calls.
So what was it like?
She's crying, she's saying she feels excluded, hurt, and obviously this just sends OP's wife into a tailspin.
Oh man, that's awful. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Right. The poor woman's already dealing with so much and now this. So OP decides he's got to put his foot down, lays down the law.
Okay, what'd he say?
He tells his mom straight up, if you contact my wife again about the birth plan, you won't see the baby for 2 months after the birth. And for every time after that, it's another month added on.
Wow, he's serious.
Dead serious.
It's definitely a strong stance. It shows he's fiercely protective of his wife and wants to minimize her stress.
Absolutely. But as you can imagine, this doesn't go over well.
No. What happened?
OP's dad gets involved, calls up his son, accuses him of being controlling, and demands an apology to his mother.
Oh boy. Now it's a full-blown family feud.
Oh, it is. And I think this is where we start to see this pattern of enabling, the father, maybe not intentionally, but he's kind of reinforcing the mother's behavior.
Yeah, that can be really damaging in the long run because it prevents her from realizing the impact of her actions.
Right, and it just adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? We've got the stage set, the players in place, and the conflict is brewing.
Definitely. This is good.
But before we dive into what the Reddit community had to say and get our experts' take, I want to hear from you guys. What are your initial reactions? What stands out to you so far?
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? This simple question, am I the a-hole, really opens up this whole can of worms about family dynamics and setting boundaries, especially with the people you love.
Yeah, no kidding. And this isn't just about this one specific situation, right? We've heard from so many listeners who've gone through something similar, overbearing in-laws, boundary issues, and that struggle of balancing respect for your parents with the need to protect your own family.
Yeah, it's a universal struggle. And this case really brings up a tricky part of it all, How do you deal with those conflicts when you're maybe dealing with someone who's, let's say, using a few manipulative tactics?
Ooh, good point. Yeah. We were just talking about MIL's behavior and how the father might be unintentionally enabling it all.
Right.
But let's break that down a little more. What are some red flags? What should people be looking out for that might suggest someone's being manipulative?
Okay, well, a few things come to mind right off the bat. First, there's the classic guilt trip, making you feel bad for not doing what they want, often by playing the victim.
Like when MIL called OP's wife crying, saying she felt excluded.
Exactly. It's all about trying to make you feel obligated to change your mind out of pity, right?
Yeah.
Then you got another tactic, shifting blame. That's where someone avoids taking responsibility and twists things around to make it seem like it's your fault.
So that's like Milil blaming her daughter's Milil for the whole situation and saying she's always been nice.
You got it. It's a way to deflect and stay on that moral high ground. And then there's minimizing or denying your feelings.
Oh, I've seen that one.
Yeah, it's super common, right? They basically dismiss your concerns or tell you you're overreacting, even when you're genuinely hurt.
So if OP had said something to his mom and she was like, oh, you're being too sensitive, I was just excited, that would be minimizing.
100%. They're invalidating your emotions, making you feel like your needs aren't important.
Wow, this is getting deep. It sounds like it can be really subtle, especially when it's coming from someone you love.
It really can be.
Yeah.
And that's why it's crucial to be aware of these tactics and, most importantly, trust your gut.
Yeah.
If something feels off, if you sense someone's trying to control you, it's okay to push back, to set those boundaries.
Right. So, okay, let's say you're in OP's shoes. You see these patterns in your mom's behavior. You need to set boundaries. But how do you actually do that? Especially with family, it can feel impossible.
It's definitely not easy, but there are some strategies that can help. First and foremost, clear communication. You got to be direct and assertive about your needs.
So no more beating around the bush.
Nope. It's time to be upfront and honest about what you're okay with and what's not going to fly.
Got it. And what about when they try to guilt trip you or play the victim? How do you handle that?
That's where staying calm and detached comes in. Don't let yourself get sucked into their emotional whirlwind. Acknowledge their feelings, but don't engage in arguments or try to justify yourself.
Man, that takes a lot of strength, doesn't it?
It does. It requires some serious emotional resilience, which is why having a support system is key. Talk to your partner, a friend, a therapist, anyone who can validate you and help you process it all.
Makes sense. And what about consequences? We talked about OP's ultimatum, but is that always the right move?
Not necessarily. Ultimatums can sometimes backfire and just make things worse. I think it's often more effective to focus on natural consequences.
Natural consequences? What do you mean?
Well, think about it. If someone keeps disrespecting your boundaries, there will be natural consequences. They might miss out on events or opportunities to connect with you or your family.
So it's less about punishment and more about letting them experience the results of their actions.
Exactly. It shows them that their choices matter without getting into a power struggle. But, I'm sure a lot of people listening are thinking, what if my family just doesn't get it? What if they completely refuse to respect my boundaries?
Yeah, that's a tough one. What then?
That IS tough. Sometimes, no matter how hard we try, family members just aren't ready to change or compromise. And in those situations, you might have to make some hard choices,
Like limiting contact or even going no contact?
It's a last resort, for sure, but sometimes it's the only way to truly protect yourself and your immediate family.
Oof, that's heavy stuff. Setting boundaries with family can be one of the hardest things we do.
It can be, but it's also one of the most important. Boundaries are essential for healthy relationships. They help us define our needs, protect ourselves, and create that sense of safety and respect within our families.
So even though it's tough, it's worth it in the end.
Absolutely. It's an investment in your well-being and the long-term health of your family relationships.
Well, I think we've covered a lot here. We've talked about manipulative behavior, setting boundaries, having that support system, but we haven't even gotten to those Reddit responses yet. Let's see what the internet had to say about all of this.
Ooh, I'm curious to hear what other people thought.
Me too.
No.
So this is where the story really blew up online. OP shared his dilemma, asked, am I the a-hole for setting these boundaries with my mother? And let me tell you, the internet had opinions.
Oh, I bet they did. These posts always get people fired up.
This one was no exception. The responses were overwhelmingly in OP's favor. People were praising him for standing up for his wife, prioritizing her needs, and, putting those boundaries in place with his mom.
That's interesting. Seems like there's more awareness now about the importance of mental health during pregnancy and postpartum, right? People are realizing it's okay to set boundaries, even with family, to protect yourselves during such a sensitive time.
Absolutely. And it sounds like a lot of people really resonated with OP's situation. They share their own stories of overbearing in-laws, trying to control birth plans, disrespecting boundaries. It's like a universal experience for new parents, isn't it?
It is. And, that's a good reminder that these challenges are more common than we think. It can be really comforting to know you're not alone in this.
So true. But beyond the "Am I the a-hole" verdict, the Reddit responses also gave OP some good advice, right? What were some of the key takeaways there?
One thing that came up a lot was involving the hospital staff in enforcing those boundaries. Letting the nurses know what's going on and asking them to politely but firmly redirect any unwanted visitors.
Oh, that's smart. It takes the pressure off OP and his wife from having to confront MIL directly.
Right. And it sets a clear boundary from the get-go. Another common suggestion was blocking communication with MIL altogether until after the baby is born.
Oof, that can be hard to do.
It can be, but sometimes it's necessary to create that space for healing and peace of mind. It sends the message that you're serious about those boundaries.
So it seems like there are a lot of people out there who've been through similar situations and come out the other side. They've given OP some practical tips, validated his feelings, and, just offered that sense of community.
It's a great example of how online communities can provide support during difficult times. Just knowing you're not alone can make such a difference.
It really can. But let's be real, reading through all those Reddit comments can be overwhelming. There are so many opinions, different viewpoints, sometimes even conflicting advice. It's hard to sift through it all.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. And that's where having a framework for understanding these family dynamics and some tools for navigating them effectively, that's where our expertise comes in, right?
You got it. So let's bring in our expert to give their take on the psychology and the sociology at play here. What are your thoughts?
Well, what really strikes me is how this story reflects the changing landscape of family relationships in our society.
What do you mean?
Traditionally, there was this clear hierarchy in families. Parents were the authority figures, and children were expected to follow their lead.
Because I said so, kind of thing.
Exactly. But in today's world, those lines are getting blurrier. We're seeing a shift towards more equal relationships between parents and adult children. There's more emphasis on individual autonomy, personal boundaries, mutual respect.
And that can lead to conflict when those expectations clash.
Absolutely. Especially during big life changes like marriage or having a baby. These are moments when traditional roles and expectations get challenged and new boundaries need to be set.
It's like everyone's trying to figure out their place in this new family structure, and it can get messy.
It can. And it takes a lot of open communication, empathy, and a willingness to adapt.
So do you think maybe MIL is having trouble letting go of that traditional authority role, accepting that her son is an adult making his own choices?
It's definitely possible. She might be acting out of love, but her actions could be rooted in this need to maintain control.
And that's where the conflict comes in, right? Because OP and his wife are asserting their independence and setting boundaries that challenge that old school view of family.
Exactly. It's this clash of values and expectations.
Wow, that's some serious food for thought. It's not just about MIL being difficult or OP being stubborn. There are these bigger societal shifts happening that are impacting how families function.
Right, and it reminds us that these situations are often way more complex than they seem at first glance.
So understanding those underlying dynamics can help us approach things with more empathy and clarity.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that everyone's coming from their own place with their own experiences and beliefs. Finding common ground requires empathy, communication, and a willingness to compromise.
Well said. Okay, let's take a moment to reflect. We've gone over the specifics of this Reddit post, the different perspectives, and the bigger picture of how families are evolving. But now, I want to turn it over to you guys, our listeners. What resonates with you the most?
What are your experiences with setting boundaries in your own families? What challenges have you faced?
Have you ever dealt with manipulative behavior from loved ones? How did you handle it?
Share your stories with us on social media. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep this conversation going.
Because sometimes the best learning comes from sharing those experiences and supporting each other through these complex family journeys. But before we wrap up, we have one last thought for you to chew on. Imagine yourself in OP's shoes. You're about to become a parent, your partner is anxious, and your parents are adding to the stress. How would you balance respecting their feelings with prioritizing your partner's needs during such a vulnerable time?
It's a tough one, right? There's no easy answer.
No, there really isn't. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to families. But I think communication is key.
Oh, absolutely. Being open and honest with your partner and your parents, that's huge. You have to be clear about your needs, what you're expecting, but also, try to understand where they're coming from.
Right. It's like finding that balance, being assertive, but also being compassionate. And sometimes maybe even bringing in some outside help, like a therapist or a mediator.
Totally. Having someone to guide those conversations and help everyone reach a solution that works, that respects everyone's needs.
Makes sense. So let's bring it all back full circle. You guys sent in this Reddit post asking, is this husband the a-hole? And while the internet was pretty clear on that one, no, he's not. I think we've uncovered something much bigger here.
Definitely. We've really dug into those family dynamics, how tricky those boundaries can be, and especially how important it is to prioritize mental health, during pregnancy and postpartum.
Because let's face it, that's a super vulnerable time.
Absolutely.
And what we've learned is these conflicts, they're rarely simple. It's not just black and white, good guy, bad guy.
Nope, there's always more to it.
Right. It's about understanding what's going on beneath the surface, the unspoken stuff, the things each person brings to the table, their own baggage.
And realizing that sometimes, even when we have good intentions, we can accidentally hurt the people we love.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. So as you guys navigate your own family relationships, just remember to be aware of your needs, your boundaries, communicate clearly and respectfully, and don't be afraid to reach out for support when you need it.
Because at the end of the day, it's all about building those healthy, supportive relationships that allow everyone to thrive.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to leave you with one final thought to take with you. If you were a friend of this couple, what advice would you give them as they figure out how to deal with their families? Think about that one. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep with us.